Greetings, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. This is Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Shivarao Lakau. Thank you for joining us. Now, senior government officials, religious leaders, senior artists and young artists as well, relatives and fans of the legendary artist gathered at the Friendship Park, and bid farewell to the late Ali Birra. Attending the ceremony, the Ethiopian Musicians Association President Dawit Yifru said the legendary Ethiopian artist Ali Birra played a major role in bringing Ethiopian music to world recognition. Shagayamata was more on that.
Artist Ali Birra passed away on Sunday afternoon at the age of 75 while receiving treatment at Adama General Hospital. Government officials, religious leaders, senior and young artists, relatives and fans of the legendary artist gathered at the Friendship Park and paid their respects. Attending the ceremony, the Ethiopian Musicians Association President Dawit Yifru said the legendary Ethiopian artist Ali Birra played a major role in bringing Ethiopian music to world recognition.
ከጥበብ ውስጥ ጨልፎ ያወጣውን ለኢትዮጵያ አርቲስቶች በተለይ ለወጣቶች
Ali Birra was a leading Ethiopian artist, an exemplary to many artists, especially to the youth, on how a piece of artwork can be composed and performed on a stage. He showed us how an artwork can properly be presented to the public. He made an immense contribution to the Ethiopian music for IRSA International Organization.
Muhammad Ahmed, the renowned Ethiopian musician, described Ali Birra as a generous, outstanding and humorous artist. He also said the artist presented melody to his songs of Nafkot Shegodany and Tizi Tizi Yaleng.
Ali Birra ትልቅ ሰው ነበር።
Ali Birra is a generous, intelligent, funny, respectful, and unique musician. He presented the melody of Nafkot Shegodany song to me. Apart from singing, this renowned and loved artist plays various musical instruments like guitar. I have no words to express who Ali Birra is.
ሰፋ ያለውን ነገር ለሱ ለመናገር ቃላት ያንሰኛል በእውነት።
Standing beside Ali Birra during his illness, Lily Marcos lauded the fans and all parties for the great respect they gave to her husband.
On behalf of the family, I would like to start by expressing my heartfelt thank you to all for your presence. Please know that I am grateful for your love and unwavering support during this most difficult time of my life. Forgive me if I don't mention all your names, because it would be impossible for me to do so at the moment. In short, I want to thank the whole country.
After paying tributes to the artist in Addis Ababa, his body was dispatched to Dreddawa city to be laid to rest at Leghar Muslim Cemetery.
Ali was laid to rest at Leghar Muslim Cemetery after a farewell event at the Dreddawa Stadium late on November 8, 2022. Senior officials of the city administration of Dreddawa and Harare city, including ministers from the federal government and Speaker of the Ethiopian House of Federation, among others, were part of the event. Artist Ali has received lifetime achievement awards from various art awarding organizations. He improved his artistic knowledge and skill by attending music lessons in Ethiopia and abroad. And he had immense skills of playing lead and bass guitar, piano, among other musical instruments. In addition, he was also a songwriter and composer. Ali, who has been devoted to his profession for the past 60 years, was awarded an honorary doctorate degrees from Dreddawa and Jimma universities.
The destructive war in the northern part of Ethiopia comes to an end with an agreement signed in Pretoria, South Africa. Amidst of this adverse situation, Ethiopia's economic development endeavors are proved resilient, of which is the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is nearing completion. For more of GOP-related issues and other current matters of the country, watch us on Addis News Hour of ETV Language Channel.
The 2022 Ethiopian Great Run will take place this November. ETV English is provide live reporting, exclusive interview, sport assortments, and other related activities in the competition. We are also ready to make a report to show the significance of Ethiopian Great Run in cementing or boosting the sport diplomacy of Ethiopia.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. Moving on, Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde says strengthening Africa's infrastructural connectivity is urgently needed to improve the lives of Africans. The remark was made at the 8th edition of African Engineering Week and the 6th African Engineering Conference that kicked off in Addis Ababa. Habtamu Ashagri has more on that.
The 8th edition of African Engineers Week and the 6th African Engineers Conference, which kicked off in Addis Ababa, highlighted African countries are facing lack of infrastructure deficit to realize inclusive and sustainable development to improve the quality of life. Against this backdrop, over 100 African engineers and other development partners are discussing the major infrastructure bottlenecks in the continent which hinder its growth. Speaking on the occasion, Ethiopian President Sahle-Work Zewde said improving Africa's infrastructure connectivity is needed to improve the lives of Africans.
Infrastructure development and connectivity are the key areas of continental cooperation. The engineering education and capacity building should go hand in hand for the success of the development of infrastructure and enhanced connectivity. To this end, inter-regional and regional professional associations have irreplaceable contribution towards filling the gaps in quality education, enforcement of ethical practices, and African countries need therefore to assist and reinforce these voluntary professional associations so as to help them act as a springboard for properly tuned and well-coordinated deployment of capacity building to the members of their respective associations.
Improving the quality of education is also critical to create favorable conditions to boost Africa's infrastructure connectivity, the president underlined.
The efforts in infrastructure need to be supported by the development of soft skills through engineering education and enhancement of technical skills. Last week, I had the honor of attending the Africa Investment Forum organized by the African Development Bank in Abidjan. This has become now a regular gathering. But that in many issues that were raised, priority areas, infrastructure has still kept the #1 position. Investment in that critical area has never been as glaring as it was during that conversation.
The president also underscored the role of Ethiopia's private sector's engagement in various development projects. Talking to ETV, President of Federation of African Engineers Organization, Caroline Bow-Chedid, said the conference is vital to expand good experiences.
African engineers have a lot they can do for each other. Now, in Africa, we are not all at the same level of development. Some have gone far in some things, and some are really behind. But we can learn from each other. If you take the example of water access, we're all trying to get access to water and sanitation. I learned that countries like Egypt, some places, Southern Africa and so on, they have gone far. How did they do it? So we need to learn from them. We have so many other issues that are common to us, and by coming here, discussing it and so on, we can find out what other countries have done, and then we can also do the same, and that way we can develop much faster, our infrastructure much faster.
Over 100 African engineers, development partners, government officials, invited guests, and others are participating in the 5 days conference.
Now, as we speak, dear viewers, Ethiopia has gone through unprecedented developments and achievements, including the peace truce between the federal government and TPLF, to its unprecedented first ever, as far as my knowledge is concerned, exports of wheat to foreign countries. What's the meaning of this economic-wise? Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Zamadene Nigatu, who is an economist, and we're going to talk about the implications. Thank you so much for joining me, Zamadene.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I said, Ethiopia government and the TPLF have agreed to solve their differences amicably, peacefully in South Africa. Economic-wise speaking, what's the implication here that you see?
Right. To turn your question around, what is the peace dividend, I guess is what you're asking me. So it has multiple fronts. As you know, for any investment to occur, for economic activity to grow, the most fundamental question everybody asks is peace, right?
Exactly.
Because everything else becomes a detail. So last week, when the announcement was made, and actually we watched it live as the agreement was being signed, there was a very early indication that investors are starting to regain confidence on the Ethiopian economy, which has been, affected for the last 2 years. I'll give you a very simple example. Ethiopia has about 9 years ago, issued what's called a Eurobond, a $1 billion Eurobond, which will be maturing this 2023. For the last year, maybe a year and a half, the bonds were trading significantly below their par value. That means investors were having concerns about the economy. The day the agreement was signed, the price of the Eurobonds went up.
Oh.
Okay? Just the simple fact that there was an agreement. Obviously, there's a process we have to go through. So what I call the peace dividend is very significant for Ethiopia. This was just a simple example I'm giving you from a global perspective. But for us as Ethiopians, as a country, to have peace means economic progress will accelerate. Resources that were being deployed for the conflict will now be redeployed to the productive sector of the economy. That means it increases employment, it increases manufacturing, agriculture, all the sectors that we can think of, which are part of the economy, the service sector, will now have more resources to invest, which means more people will get jobs.
Absolutely.
Exports will be enhanced. So there's a very significant meaning to having peace in the country. Now, I know we're talking about the economy. Obviously, other things, politics, social, and other things will benefit. But from the economic front, we see very significant up for Ethiopia. I'll give you another very good example. You've seen in the headlines, the IMF is now re-engaging with Ethiopia.
Yeah.
As you know, the IMF, the World Bank, has suspended financing of billions of dollars, which has already been approved a couple of years ago, more than 2 years ago, but they're suspended during the conflict. Now, those are positive initiatives. I know it's early days, but you can multiply that by over the course of the next few months or the next few years, when very significant foreign currency comes into the country for the productive sector, also for rebuilding what was destructed last year. Ambassador Redwan actually quoted a figure, which he said Ethiopia needs $20 billion to rebuild what was damaged. So there's a very significant, what I call peace dividend, that comes out of this agreement last week.
Already we are seeing the positive, encouraging results.
Early days.
Yes. As you know, Ethiopia has also started wheat exports, and this is really unprecedented. So what are the multi-layered meanings here that you see?
Right, it has two meanings for me. One, as an Ethiopian, we're very proud that we've now stopped importing wheat. It has a very, I suppose, emotional, psychological, but also economic meaning to stop importing wheat. Already, Ethiopia was the second largest producer of wheat in sub-Saharan Africa, but it wasn't sufficient. Now, we go from an importer, imagine, to very soon, there was news headlines and discussions by others, very soon Ethiopia will be a net exporter of wheat. Yeah. By the way, that's just one example. There are a lot of, for example, the agriculture sector, we see lately very significant investments in mechanized farming. When that starts happening in large scale over the next year or two, it's not inconceivable for Ethiopia to be actually a large scale agriculture exporter, one. Second, a value addition type of agriculture, converting coffee to, processed coffee. And so it really has a very significant meaning to have this peace.
Wow.
Okay? So wheat is just the big headline, and it should be. But over the next hour, expect, today we export about 4.2 billion. Over the next few years, there's no reason that could not be doubled, anchored especially by agriculture. So wheat, we're happy, but we can replicate it in many other sectors.
Yeah, definitely the best is yet to come. Thank you so much, Zahmuddin.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is Diplomatic Insight, ladies and gentlemen. And my guest today is Ambassador Ratta Alamu. He is Ethiopian ambassador to Israel.
Ethiopia is known as a diplomatic hub of Africa. Ethiopia as a seat of the African Union, as a seat of the Economic Commission for Africa, and it is a center for major diplomatic activities in Africa.
The great industrial parks, power sharing with neighboring countries, the linkage in infrastructure and hosting international and regional summits.
We want our partners to understand that Ethiopia's strong stance for peace and security in the Horn, for economic development in Africa.
Welcome back, dear viewers. You are still watching Addis News Hour. And moving on, political analyst tells ETV that the peace agreement between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF is such a magnanimous achievement for Africa. The scholar, Dr. Abdi Zanaba, indicated that the agreement has also a huge impact in the financial posture. Tigistar Nessa reports.
Talking to ETV English, Dr. Abdi Zanaba noted that the Pretoria Agreement signed between the federal government of Ethiopia and the TPLF is such a magnanimous achievement since silencing the gun is part and parcel of the African Union Commission Agenda 2063.
On the instant reflection, is a phenomenal achievement. It is quite magnanimous. In regard to the term you have used is very much important, silencing the guns. This is part and parcel of the African Union agenda, which is the aspect of the agenda of 2063, and it's about ending conflicts and putting manifest conflicts to the end. And this is an inspiration to start with a continental level analysis. What we have witnessed in Pretoria is a great achievement in terms of the continent that's aspiring to ensure peace and stability. And this is a marker that conflicts can be addressed and dealt with in a proper manner, and peace can prevail. And this is a major indicator. And also in regard to a number of other variables as well. We live at the international level in the age what we call a never-ending wars, but we have demonstrated that of course, these manifest conflicts come to an end when people talk, when people to discuss. There are always resolutions. So at multiple levels, this is a huge matter. Of course, the country above all is very much critical, especially a country where political culture is highly dominated by violence and constant engagement. What we have witnessed is quite phenomenal, and I'm very much happy, both as a citizen and as a political analyst. I'm very much happy to see this major development unfolding in the Horn of Africa.
Abdi further stated that Ethiopia will play a very important role in addressing and supporting on issues related to peace and security in the Horn.
This is part and parcel of the bigger political transition the country is experiencing. And in this regard, what we have seen is a trend changer momentum that can bring about a new political culture in the Ethiopian political spectrum at large. The political culture, highly dominated by violence and engagement, as I said earlier, is now shifting towards a dialogue and engagement. So it's a major indicator in terms of that. And as well as at the continental level as well, as you know, the Horn of Africa there are a lot of challenges we need to overcome in terms of security and the like. So Ethiopia will play a very important role also in addressing and supporting neighbors in addressing their conflicts and issues regard to peace. And also this will have a huge impact at the continental level. The continent is suffering in a number of challenges. One happens to be security, and there is a huge expectation from the Ethiopian side as well to play an important role as a diplomatic capital of the continent. So the friends and both Ethiopians will find this great achievement need to be nurtured and fostered. We need to protect peace. Really demands fostering and nurturing, and this is an initial phase that brings about, as you have said rightly, in silencing the guns. This has to be fostered in terms of economy and other means in order to ensure its sustainability.
The analyst also expressed that the peace agreement has a huge impact in the financial posture of the country.
This is a country that has a huge importance in the sub-region as well as globally, and people and the elite of the country understand and have the good understanding about this important role that Ethiopia is expected to play. So with this development comes also major challenges as well. For this, the country needs to prepare through this national dialogue and other mechanisms, and trying to address some of the political sticking points in this momentum as well. So I think this will have a huge impact in the short term in the economy and financial posture of the country.
Well, viewers, time now to talk about trending stories over the past 24 hours, and I'm joined by my colleague Goshu Melso. He's going to help us some of the things that he observed over the past 24 hours. Goshu, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Shmi.
So, as you know, in the aftermath of the peace truce between the federal government and TPLF, social media coverage has been intensified, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you observed in this regard?
Yeah, as you have said, after the peace deal signed between the federal government and the TPLF, it is viral in social media, and I've seen that the Ethio-Kenya power transmission or power connector test is successfully completed. I have seen these two things. We will see. We will go through them.
Right.
So after the peace deal signed between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF, it is viral in social media, and it has got special attention in international media, including. So it's parts and parcel of the agreement, Article 6 of the agreement, DDR, disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. And after the agreement signed within 5 days, the army commanders should meet and discuss about the process of demobilization, reintegration. So parts of that, Army commanders General Tadesse Orrede and Field Marshal Birhanu Julla met in Kenya, and still the discussion on the process of the demobilization and disarmament is takes place in Nairobi. So according to some diplomatic sources, it will be continue till tomorrow, and we expect some official statements from after the discussion concluded. So the other thing is that Ethiopia and Kenya, it's to be recalled that Ethiopia and Kenya signed a power transmission or a power export between them. So that comes to realize, and Ethiopian and Kenya interconnector power transmission test successfully completed according to Ethiopian Electric Power. So the Ethiopian Electric Power said that the testing of transferring power to the Ethiopian Kenyan high voltage direct current converter station and transmission line project was successfully completed as decided, and the trial of transmitting power on the 500 kilovolt high power transmission line project in Kenya officially started yesterday, and various electromechanical devices and other things installed on the project, as well as communication data signal were also being checked and tested at different times. The other thing is, according to the Ethiopian Electric Power, the success of the test work is an indication that the power connection with Kenya will fully commence soon, and it was able to connect the signal to the Kenya network by sending a communication signal a few days ago.
Right.
The Ethio-Kenya transmission line and converter station project was built at a cost of $334.5 million by Chinese engineers, and the construction work began in 2016, has the capacity to transmit to 2,000 megawatts of electricity. So here, when you see here the regional integration, it boosts in the regional integration. As you know, Ethiopia is interconnected with various infrastructures, with, for example, within our neighboring Djibouti, we're interconnected with railway transportation and water infrastructure, and within the Sudan, we're also interconnected with land transport. So when you see, this is where Ethiopia becomes the anchor of the region, in the East Africa region, and it boosts regional integration as well as it expedites the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This is a very important idea, and it is to be replicated in the other sides. So Ethiopia becomes the Kenya's second power electricity, or becomes source of the second biggest source of electricity for Kenya. This all from Mishpe.
Goshu, thank you so much for that update.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back, dear viewers. Moving on, African coffee beans are praised by coffee fans throughout the world for their rich flavor and unique acidity and pleasant aroma. The number of coffee drinkers grows in China each year. The country should be the next leading destination for African coffee beans, it was disclosed. And Tixernisa takes up CGTN Africa's file as follows.
Africa, the continent where coffee was born, plays an important role in the world coffee industry. African coffee being surprised by coffee fans throughout the world for the rich flavor, unique acidity, and pleasant aroma. Africa also has the most coffee-producing countries of any continent. Ethiopia, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, Tanzania, and Kenya are the top 5 coffee-producing countries in Africa. Coffee exporters from Africa are valued at nearly $2.5 billion in 2021. Ethiopia was the leading coffee exporter, earning around $1.2 billion, while Uganda followed with an export value of $594.2 million in recent years. Many African coffee-producing countries have been commissioning strenuous measures to enhance coffee export earnings as the number of coffee drinkers grows in China each year. The country could be the next leading destination for African coffee beans in 2021. China's coffee market was worth $50 billion according to the data from the International Coffee Organization. The country's coffee market scale will hit $153 billion by 2025. Since the Chinese market is still its infancy with much more room for growth, it will present a huge market potential for African coffee-producing countries. Various efforts have been made to offer wider market access for African coffee. China has signed a memorandum of understanding on e-commerce cooperation with some African countries, which helps to sell African products like coffee on Chinese e-commerce platforms. Measures like expediting goods, quarantine, and inspection, as well as tariff exemptions, have contributed to increased exports from Africa. Meanwhile, annual trade fairs like the China International Import Expo also provides channels for African coffee producers to display their products, promote their brands, and find more business partners in China.
The Embassy of Ethiopia in Tanzania held a Zoom meeting with other stakeholders to discuss and magnify African issues. The Zoom meeting is aimed at evaluating African concerns in the lens of global media. Demis Macro reports.
Thank you very much, everyone and friends. Let me start with my own.
In a Zoom discussion hosted by the Ethiopian embassy based in Tanzania, African representation in the lens of global media has been dealt well. Opening the discussion, Ethiopian ambassador to Tanzania, Shibru Mamo said Africa is the cradle of mankind and home to some of the world's oldest civilizations. According to Ambassador Shibru, the media in the West, however, represent Africa as a place where endless poverty, disease, conflict, and violence exist. Such misrepresentations can be countered primarily by Africans, and the recent Ethiopian peace deal brokered by Africans themselves is a good case in point, Ambassador Shibru underscored.
Africa are capable of taking their own responsibility. The very current example is the peace negotiation agreement reached between the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and TPLF was chaired by African Union in African land. It was successful, which shows that the principle of African solution to African problems. I can't deny that African media has several challenges to platform. The role of that we expect of it, but there are also immense opportunities. This type of panel discussion will help African journalists to use their talents and work for the development of Africa. We Africans need to start to own and tell our own history. African journalists need to sharpen their skill and deepen their understanding of the African continent so that they will be able to counter stereotypical narratives about Africa and the African people.
In a presentation highlighting the global media disinformation campaign against Africa, Dr. Albert Tibaijuka said most of the Western global media have been reporting skewed narratives concerning Africa. The problem has been further worsened as the global South paid little or no attention to build an equivalent powerful global media that can counter the disinformation campaign.
The South, was not being able to mobilize enough resources, in order to set up the powerful media industries that could counter the narrative. Moreover, unfortunately, the area is technologically non-advanced or less advanced. And of course, we also know it's because of the same point that I've raised, of mobilizing resources, including also the limited expertise.
In the Zoom discussion concerning African representation in the lens of a global media, Ethiopia's experience since the conflict happened in the north was covered well. Accordingly, the participants called on all concerned stakeholders to realize a powerful Pan-African media that will serve the interest of Africa sooner than later.
You have been watching Addis News Hour. Now a quick recap of the top stories. President Sahle-Work Zewde underscores the need for strengthening Africa's infrastructural connectivity to improve Africans' lives. And a scholar dubs peace agreement between Ethiopian government and TPLF magnanimous achievement for Africa. Well, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you, dear viewers, for having been with us. Until I see you next time, stay with the rest of the program.